So I've got a GSX-R750 K7 2007 model, and it's coming in because the clutch on it is completely go. So we're going to put this upgraded clutch into it and make the bike work again, get it back on track. So first thing we're going to do is get into the bike. Most modern sports bikes and most modern naked bikes and modern bikes, to be honest, the casing on the side, the crankshaft in there, gearbox shaft, one of them's in there, but they're both in there, but the one that the clutch is on is in there. So if you take this case off, clutch basket will be in there, and then strip the clutch out of the clutch basket. So we need to take this casing off first. On this bike, it's just the M8 bolts that go all the way around the outside, so we'll crack all them off, take that casing off. Hopefully there won't be too much oil comes out of it as well. Hopefully the oil line, which should be because it's filled right, should be below the casing, so we'll not waste any of the oil out of it either. So once you've got them all cracked off, I like to leave them in so you know where to go. You can take them all out, check they're all the same length as well. So these are all the same length, so you can muddle them up, doesn't make much of a difference. Sometimes you get them where they're all different lengths. So what I like to do then is either lay them out on the floor in the order they come out in, or I'll just leave them in and I'll take the casing off with them all in, lay the casing down. But these are all the same length. You'll also notice well that these have all been drilled so they can be lock wired. So I don't know if it'll pick up on that. Little hole in there so you can wire them all. One of the track regulations, racing regulations, so that's standard bike isn't like that, but this we do. So put all the bolts to one side. Trusty rubber hammer, give the case a bit of a whack, break the seal off on it. And there is oil coming out of it slightly, but that is all freed up now and should wiggle off. I'm gonna have to put my gloves on now. So I've got my gloves on now. Pull this casing off. Now I'll get it off. Use my bar on it just to give it a bit of it. There we go. Now what you find is a cable here. You can disconnect that up under there somewhere. That cable is the pickup point for the ignition off the end of the crank. You can either undo the cable, just lift the tank up and stuff, a bit of a chew on for something like this. You can undo these points down here on the pickup and take it out. Or as I like to do, I just run a cable tie and leave that hanging up there off something on the top of the bike so it's out the way. I can still get access to the clutch. When you take these off as well, try and save the gasket. Now this has been off before because somebody's filled it with sealant, but the gasket looks pretty good anyway, so we can put this back on, reuse it, that's fine, and get access to the clutch now. So there's the clutch pack. So what you get now is the clutch basket is a bit on the outside, all the clutch plates are on the inside. So the outside shaft is attached to the crank, rotates from the crank power. The inside hubs rotated to the first shaft in the gearbox, which turns the shaft in the gearbox, puts power to the wheel. And there's always pressure on there, that's always locked off. So at the minute we try to turn that, it tries to turn the back wheel, tries to rotate the crank. So what happens is there's springs on here that apply pressure onto the plates, crush them all together. So when you pull the clutch lever in, it pulls this off, which takes the pressure off the plate, which we'll try and show now. So this goes off, which releases the pressure on the plates. So the plates can slip, which means this now rotates freely from the crank, splits the drive, and then re-grips again. Hopefully you can see that on there, and that's how the clutch pack works on these. And to change the clutches out when the clutch plates are knackered, you just undo the 6 bolts in this case, the middle bit comes out, and you can get the clutch pack off. So I'll show you how to do that now. So 10mm M10 socket, and they shouldn't be on very tight at all. I would have thought 20 or 30 psi. If you wanted to torque them in, it'll tell you in the manual if you want to have a look. So we'll just crack them all off first, like so. And so got all the retaining nuts and springs off. So basically that goes into there, pushes that spring into there, pushes that onto the plate, makes the plate grip, and that will now slide off, and there you have it. Now when you pull the clutch lever, it does that on the inside, which pulls this off the clutch pack, releases the pressure, lets them all spin freely. So now we've got that off, we can remove all of the clutch plate. Now there's the first one. So friction and steel, and it's got a little bit hot. Now on this one as well, I don't know why, but Suzuki have got the first one in this separate slot here. I don't know why they've done that for some reason by Suzuki. Then the rest of them are down there. Now you always have friction steel, friction steel, friction steel. So we slot them all out. Couple more now, get my fingers in. That is your clutch pack, and it doesn't look too bad, but it's very dry, and the plate here, the little friction pads are soft as hell. Also looks like it's been getting quite hot in there. Now this is been slipping on track. Once the bike gets up to about 120 mile an hour, the clutch is just slipping like hell on it, and it's just got progressively worse. And now really under any load it just slips up. So we're going to swap that out for a faster race road clutch and some heavier springs as well, so it gives it a bit better grip. Other thing we'll look at as well, the first friction plate on this has a slightly different friction pattern on it. Quite big chunks compared to the middle ones, different sized chunks. I don't know if you can really see that on there. Now the last one as well is also a lot thinner in diameter compared to the rest as well. So just to make sure that we put the right plates in the right order in the right place when we put them back in as well. So the new replacement clutch, you get your 9 new friction plates. the little thin one to go on the back, which is thinner than the rest. You get your new metal plates, which, as you can see, compared to the old ones, are in much better nick. Well, brand new compared to these knackered old ones that are burnt to hell and scored and grooved. You also get new spring kits, which is much heavier springs compared to standard ones, and the idea with that is that it puts more pressure onto the spring as well, onto the clutch, so that when you underload, there's less chance of it spinning because there's more pressure piped up with the springs as well. So before you can fit these, you've got to soak them in oil for 2 or 3 hours. Use the same engine oil that you would use in the bike. So while I'm on, I'm going to do an oil filter change. I'm going to buy a little bit extra oil, leave these to soak in it overnight as well. So, little trick for soaking the clutch plates. The EBC clutches always come in this little boxy thing. Easiest way I've found to leave them to soak: tear the little plastic container out, put the plates inside it, and just pour the oil in there, let it soak up in there. So, get a bit of the oil. Obviously pull the cap off from the bottle first. A little bit of the oil in there. And then basically what you want to do is just make sure that you get the oil between all the plates. Just separate them all up and submerge them and dunk them and make sure they are all fully wet in there. And give them a bit of a wiggle about. What you want to do basically is make sure you get all of these surfaces, so that's still a bit dry now, make sure they're all wet. And then leave them to soak for a few hours, let the oil soak into the plates, and that's the easiest way to soak a clutch pack I've found. So I've got to drain the oil out, change the oil filter. Got to take this low race fairing off. So you basically got 2 little clips on there, little Allen head bolt on there, so same on both sides. You just take the 2 Allen bolts out, and then take the exhaust clips off. Quick clips or whatever the hell you want to call them. That's it. And there's the lower race fairing removed. On a standard road bike, that's probably a little bit more complex because there'll be more to undo, but on a race fairing it's pretty easy. Also inside these race fairings, this has got to be able to hold all the fluid that's inside that engine. So a bit of oil's leaked down into it, but it'll hold all the engine coolant, all the engine oil, all that stuff will all hold in there. Got a bit of gravel in there from some gravel excursions as well. But that's the lower fairing removed. Now we've got to get at the oil filter, which is just up under there, and some plug off, get the oil out of it. So I've got your drain tray underneath for the oil, take the 2 bums out of it, get it underneath. Now, not here for the sump plug, 17mm or an M17, so I'm just going to crack that off. Smash my arm off the side, son, while I'm on. Get the drain bucket under it and just undo that, let the oil drain out. It's not too bad, the oil on this, it's quite clean actually, which is a good sign. Not a lot of crap in it really, but drain this out and then we can work on the oil filter. So there's the oil filter on this. So get our oil filter removal tool, line it into position underneath, so get it in there. I know this, not throwing oil everywhere. Get our little twisty tool in, get hold of it. Now this will leak a little bit of oil down onto the exhaust slightly, but that'll just burn off when the bike's first run up. So we'll just tear that out. And what I also like to do is throw them on top of the oil drain tub, so the oil can just drain itself out of there. And I'll just leave that now for 5 or 6 hours, let all the oil drain out the system on it, and that's the oil getting drained out. So I've got the new oil filter, get it out the box, and pretty straightforward really, just threads on, take all the plastic cap off, like so. Smear, this is already lightly oiled, but smear a little bit of engine oil around there as well, just to help it slide on, bed on. Get a rag, clean up around the outside of the oil housing case, just to make sure there's no debris it's going to rub on there or anything, and basically put the new filter in and turn it on. Like so. Once you've got it in, just turn it on, tight as you can with your hand, like so. Now there is a nut on the end of these. K&N have had a load of problems with these nuts failing, dropping all the oil out of the whole system. So I tend to, whenever there's one of them fitted on the filter, never use it. I always put them on hand tight as I can get them, and that's always been fine. So little tip there. So I'm going to put the sump plug back in now. Always put a new washer on when you put a new sump plug back on. Just helps it seal up, and the last thing you want is that leaking and dropping all your engine oil out onto your back wheel, because it'll only do it when you're riding it. So now we've soaked the clutch friction plate, so we're going to put all the plates back into the clutch and reassemble it now. So if you remember when we stripped them apart, the little thin one went in first. Just slot that in. Friction plate next. Sorry, metal plate, steel. Another friction plate, like so. And you basically repeat that until you've got all the plates in. And then the last one, the way the originals were fitted in there, wasn't like that, it was staggered onto that one, so we'll do that as well, so it's the same as the Suzuki setup. And now, basically, put the clutch pressure plate, or whatever you want to do, clutch actuator, or whatever you would call that, back on the outside, like so. And wind it on with the springs now, put them in, wind them all up. We also got another pack of springs with the kit, which are a lot heavier than the standard springs. When I say heavier, they're a lot harder to compress to these little soft ones. So that's it's soft, that's quite firm. Now the idea with that is as well, it puts more pressure onto the clutch pack, stops the clutch pack from slipping, got more pressure on it, so we're going to fit these in there as well while we're on. So once I've got them all wound in, nipped up, just give them a little nip. Nothing too bad. It's only going into aluminium, so it only wants to be pretty loose anyway. Well, not loose, but not overly tight. You don't want to put a power bar on there and wind them in. Just a little nip. And go and check them out. And then once you've got all that on, basically just do a quick check of the clutch lever. So yep, totally working fine. That clutch lever is a lot harder to pull now because of all the extra spring pressure on there. That's the clutch rebuilt back together. Now I've just got to put this casing on. Now there's a little dowel on these, on there, one in there. So line it up on the dowels, make sure you feed the cable back in and don't nip it. Put that on there. Now if you want to, you could put a new gasket in, put the gaskets on, it looks fine, so I'm quite happy to just reuse that. And now basically put all the nuts in, and I can get them picked up, fasten it all down. And always, once you've got them all in, tighten them all up, just double check them, just have a start point, so right to the filler cap here, yep. And I just go around them all, double check everything, always double check everything when I'm tightening stuff up, just to make sure, because all it takes is you to miss one bolt, and you could potentially have a rider, or yourself, or something go wrong. And the last thing you want is oil on the back tyre when the bike veering off into a crowd of kids watching you or something like that, so always double check everything. And always, once you've got them all in, tighten them all up, just double check them, just have a start point, so right to the filler cap here, yep. And I just go around them all, double check everything, always double check everything when I'm tightening stuff up, just to make sure, because all it takes is you to miss one bolt, and you could potentially have a rider, or yourself, or something go wrong. And the last thing you want is oil on the back tyre when the bike veering off into a crowd of kids watching you or something like that, so always double check everything. So take your oil filler cap off, it's on the top of the casing you've just fitted. Then what I like to do is put a funnel in. Some people just pour it straight in, but a funnel makes it a bit easier, stops oil and crap going everywhere. And then basically fill it up. When you do it like this, make sure you don't fill the funnel up and the funnel fills off full of oil, which does happen sometimes. Now, on this specific bike, there's a little sight glass down here, just down in there, and two lines. Now you always fill bikes up when they're on the centre stand or paddock stands. Never do it when they're on the side stand. So this is on a paddock stand, so it's flat, straight upright. So fill it up till it's between the two lines. So we'll take this to the full mark. Then what we'll do is we'll take it outside, we'll run it up, get the oil through the oil filter, because that'll take a little bit out of it when that filled up. Get the engine filled up with oil again, and top it back up if it needs it. Then we'll leave it running for 10, 15, 20 minutes. Just make sure there's no oils leaking out of it, dripping out of anywhere as well. So if we look at the oil level now on it, if we can get it to focus, there you go, you can see top of the oil level isn't the top of the full line, so that's ready to now go. Well, as you can hear now, it's lashing it down outside, which is our typical British summer, but that's the background noise. So anyway, it's had this Brembo Master cylinder fitted to it, and the brake reservoir is now up there and in a right crappy place, so I'm also going to fabricate a bit bracket up here as well and get this out of the way and tidy it up a bit more as well. So made this little bracket up in here, just fastened up the inside of the clip on up under there, and then bent this little bar down there, fasten that onto there so it's now not cable tied onto the top yoke, so that's tidied that up a bit as well.